I wonder if we make progress rationally by thinking of the extreme case. Supposing you're in an environment where it's the group that we're considering is totally dedicated to crime and the things that you feel are very ungodly. Well, it's not best to soldier on and try and find fellowship in that group. Of course, you may be in a desperately poor neighbourhood and there's no option. That's the only culture available. So I suppose rationally, one might have the courage and desire and fortitude to seek to leave that neighbourhood. You may not be able to. You might be a medieval serf tied to your village. End of story. In other words, it may just not be on the cards, on the table. It's not an option. What happens where it is an option? Well, if you must have fellowship, you would gravitate to the best that's available. It's not going to be perfect because you're in a world which is not perfect. If there is a perfect group, well, by definition, really, you're fine and safe joining it. I mean, you might wreck it because you're not perfect, of course. So in that sense, they might be unwise to have you in the group. In a way, I think I'm saying that about heaven. It's a perfect place and I'm not acceptable, not yet. I'm a child. So I'm treated as a child. I'm here in the playroom and I'm here in the classroom, whatever you like to call it, on earth, in this universe, not in heaven. So if you take what Jesus says of himself, birds have roosts, in the trees, nests if you like, but roosts. The Son of Man hath nowhere to lay his head. He's cast himself out of his society. I was going to say he's an outcast, but he's casted out himself. Right. Notice he doesn't say the Son of God. The very nature of this world is, in the Hebrew view, that you are cast out from Eden into a non-Eden place, which is pretty difficult, and those that are cast out may well be seeking God's face for help and solutions. Look at the story. He essentially reading you're reading a person who makes himself unacceptable by not conforming to the society he's in. He obviously attracts followers, pretty devoted followers, both male and female. It's the females that seem to be ministering to him, and the males that seem to be in the conversations, but not exclusively by any means. Well, he has fellowship with those that have ears to hear. And he does seem to have fellowship, not just teaching, not just conversations with, you get the impression that that's very much his reference group. You could say yes, but he's clearly in charge of this group. And he he clearly is teaching. And at one point he says, call no man master, and the next minute it says, you have called me teacher, and so I am. If I'm your teacher, why aren't you doing what I tell you? I mean, he does heavily rebuke them, really. Maybe that the question itself is at fault. You're seeking to find an ideal on something that is a blessing in some cases and not a blessing in others. And in the case of let him be unto thee as a heathen man, it was where the community had come to the conclusion that the other person's at fault and needs to put it right. And if he won't, then you should treat him as a heathen man. So there you're saying the group has the right to decide, not you, the individual. That the validity comes from the group's decision, not yours. If the group decides it's not right, you are to follow accordingly and not have anything to do with this person. In other words, the group has the authority to ostracize, excommunicate. And that in practice is pretty frightening, because most groups are not particularly holy at all, and certainly not perfect. And, a lot of people are going to be excommunicated that shouldn't be, and not excommunicated that should be, and you have to put up with the fact that you get a very non-perfect outcome, because the group is not perfect. It would work fine in heaven, but really nobody's to say that the group has got it right. Only the group. It's circular, and every group does it. Every denomination and religion knows it's right, and basically excommunicates those that don't know with it, as far as they can see. I suspect it's an advanced case of the Pauline misunderstanding of what's a good way to treat your slaves. Slavery is wrong, period. End of story. It's not a case of, yes, but how about if I treat them nicely? Slavery is not treating people nicely, by definition. I suspect groups are not godly. They are, by definition, worldly. A heavenly person is one who is God-centered. Groups are not. And they're certainly not your God-centered. Each person in the group really has his own unique values. They're similar in many ways, but they're not seeing eye to eye. Their God is not the same. You have lip service to one God, the God of the group, as defined by the group's charter and creed and mission statement. But the individual members seem to be far from this, full of all sorts of nasties like gossip and inequality, we might say, is another one. Yes. Ask not how best to run a group. Hasn't a fallen man since time begun, criticised every organisation as to how it should be better. What's wrong is he's formed an organisation instead of loving relationships ruling. He's substituted group formal regulation to determine his conduct and actions. That won't do. Your relationship is to God, and your values are accordingly. And you'll have different values. You will act to each other according to your values and learn accordingly. There's no question of forming groups. We form groups because we find groups have power, and we hope to find a group that will use its power better than we can as an individual. That's not so. It will use its power according to a mishmash of its members' interaction. It's still its members' interaction that give the outcome. And that interaction might well be conforming to a dominant leader, charismatic leader, whatever. A fear mafia thing within the group, a police state, whatever it is. An ideology that's controlling a group, and the founder of which died years ago, and it's not his ideology now anyway. It's got moulded and adapted and changed. And they are enslaved by membership to this group. Enslaved. In the sense that they surrender their freedom. And therefore their individuality. To be a conformist. And they hope by this to find joy and peace and happiness. And they're amazed when they don't. Thank you, Heavenly Dad.